Sometimes in life, tragedy hits. And it's not about acknowledging how we're feeling or feeling and sussing our situation, but it's how we get up afterwards that really counts. Hello, and welcome to Let's Get Real. Today, we're going to be talking about getting up and moving forward in your life and having that ability to do it, which not everybody can do. My name is Glenda Kroll, and I will be one of your hosts today. And my bosom buddy is here to enjoy me as well. There we go.
Hey everyone, it's Nicole, and I'm always so happy to be here. And I'm really excited about our guest today. I met him about a week ago, and we had a conversation, and everything just clicked. And when that happens, you know that the universe is working in your favor. You know there's a reason because there are no coincidences, and that he was able to get in and schedule himself today, which that's a week ago to today. I'm so excited about this guest. And I wrote just a short bio here to read to everyone. And our guest has overcome cancer. He has overcome obesity. He lives with physical disabilities, but he had to face the loss of his 13-year-old son. And instead of being a victim, he chose to be a survivor and a warrior. And now he's a certified grief counselor. And I can't imagine anyone better than him. And, sometimes you have people ask me, I lost a child too. And it's like, how do you get over it? And it's like, well, you have no choice. You have absolutely no choice. So I want to welcome here today, Henry Allen, to talk to us about who he is and how amazing he is.
Well, very lovely introduction. Thank you. So great to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you for joining us today, and we're excited to learn about you. But just like I said at the beginning, we all go through things in our life, but it's how we get through them and how we come through them is really the secret of life, and to moving forward and to not be that victim, because too often people hold on to that victimhood, and then the rest of life is not even life anymore. So, first of all, let me, my condolences for your loss, but I am blown away by your achievements more than anything. And, I wanted today, that is such an important thing, because too many people fall down and stay down. And let's go back a little bit. Let's start you. First of all, had to overcome, one of the fatal things in life is cancer. And, thank God it's, there's more and more people getting through. But, how long ago was that part of that sentence that was given to you?
That was in 1992.
Ooh, wow. Okay. So in 92, yeah, people weren't getting through and surviving cancer as they are today, more so.
Right. And this was a particular kind of cancer that was the most fatal in young men ages 17 to mid-30s at the time. And since then, there's been a lot of progress made in treating it. And so it's very clear to me why I developed cancer and survived it, because on some level, I needed to be prepared to walk with my son in his cancer journey. And he was 11 years old when he was diagnosed with anaplastic astrocytoma, which is a rare form of brain cancer in children, typically found in men over 55. So why an 11-year-old would have gotten it, nobody knows. There's so many unanswered questions. No other kid on the street got it. No other kid at school got it. It wasn't environmental. It wasn't hereditary either. That was my first question. Did I somehow, even though mine was a different kind, did I pass that on to him? But what my having had cancer and surviving did for our journey was it eliminated his fear. It eliminated his, certainly, he had every right to be depressed, angry, fearful of it.
Of course.
But he didn't, because since he could understand language, he knew my story. And when he received his diagnosis, was like, oh, okay, well, let's get on with this. Papa did. And so it bonded us, in a very profound and special way. And so I cannot look at the event of his passing as a tragedy. I look at his life as a triumph. And that's really the transformation in me, from tragedy to triumph. People look at me and say, oh, it's the worst thing that anybody could ever endure is the outliving of a child. It's unnatural that a parent should outlive a child. Well, it wasn't unnatural for me. It was perfectly natural because it happened. And children have been passing before their parents since the beginning of time, since there have been people. This is nothing new. And so to be able to apply grief to the list of universal life skills that every human being on the planet is going to meet at some point in some measure, without the skills having been passed on to them, how to handle it, how to cope with it, and endure it. I get to introduce Cameron to the world through me, and that's the greatest privilege of my life. He's an amazing soul, and still we're a team. He's very much alive, living in through me, and that's a privilege.
And I'm curious, do you think you were able to not have that anger come in because you had gone through cancer? Because the first thing that most people are, they're so angry. They've got that angry, and that takes away probably a little bit of that bonding. You can't bond really when you're angry. So you having cancer alleviated the anger?
That's a tough question because, grief, death, like birth, is a unique experience. There are some common threads there that can be identified, but every birth is unique, every death is unique. And So I couldn't compare it really to other situations. Obviously this was the worst thing that has ever happened to me, could ever happen to me. And I've had some pretty horrible things happen in my life prior to that. But on a measuring stick, this is the worst. So this has now become my measuring stick for everything else. Nothing else seems so bad. What do I have to be angry about? Cameron himself used to say, Papa, nobody has an expiration date on their foot. Nobody's promised a tomorrow. We're all going to go.
That's so wise. I mean,
nobody knows when, nobody knows how, but we're all going to go someday. And that helped me just sort of be with it as it was in the moment that we were in. Every moment was special and precious.
That's amazing that a young boy could think in that capacity. That's really amazing. And when someone's that young and we're our age, I always tell people, live your dash. That dash between when you're born and when you die, live that dash as best you can, because he's right. We don't know. There's no expiration date marked anywhere.
Great mystery, isn't it? And he wanted to do a series of talkie blogs. Most of them are on YouTube, Cameron's talkie blog. And there's one in particular that actually got booted off of YouTube because of the music that we used. He chose music to, do the intro for each one. And so it's on YouTube. If people look in my videos, it's down there. It's one of the early ones. But he talks about, it was on Martin Luther King's birthday that he did this one. And he was equating Martin Luther King's journey to the journey of kids who are going through cancer. He said, we understand that Dr. King was assassinated for what he believed was right and good and true. And he didn't die in vain, because look how far we've come because of him, because of what he was putting out in the world. And he said, we just heard of 3 kids this past weekend who didn't make it. And they didn't die in vain either. because the doctors know more about this disease because we went through the hardship of it. He said, I want to survive this, but if I don't, I'm okay with that because I'll be able to help even more people, maybe not physically anymore, but spiritually and emotionally. He said it's like the last scene in Star Wars where Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader in their final battle, and Obi-Wan says, if you strike me down, I'll become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. He said, that's how I feel about my cancer. If it strikes me down, takes my life, I'll just become more powerful than anybody can imagine, and I'll help even more people. So I'm happy if I make it, and I'm happy if I don't make it. He was 12 at the time.
That just gives me goosebumps.
Well, I was just going to say, I got shivers all over.
Oh my gosh, me too. I mean, my what hair I have on my arms is standing up.
Wait till you hear it from his lips. I mean,
I'm gonna go.
What a gift he left in not just that video, but other ones that were reassuring people who were looking at his situation as a tragedy, looking at, oh, that poor kid, you know, feeling sorry for him. He didn't feel sorry for himself 1 minute. He was empowered by his situation. And if that isn't an example of what we're all capable of, and, you know, I've worked with a lot of hundreds and hundreds of families through my foundation, the Lost Travelers Club. And you see a lot of these children who are afflicted with a terminal illness somehow become enlightened in ways that many of us never get to. And it's powerful. It's very, very powerful.
You know what, and that is so, when I think of like my kids when they were 11 and 12, you know, I want to ride my bike, I want to do this. Sometimes you wonder if they didn't come here specifically for that purpose.
Yeah.
Because I truly believe that we choose what life we step into every single life. And that is not a normal response or attitude or, you know, verbiage that 11 or 12-year-old uses. No,
he was exceptional on many levels. And his life was a triumph, is still. I don't believe in death anymore. So he's still very much alive in me. So,
well, look at what he's doing now. You know, through these talks, we can empower others because, you know, as we say, when things happen in life, you know, the worst thing that you can do is have that victim mode. And I've seen it in parents who have lost a child because, you know, I've been exposed to that happening many times. And, you know, it's as if they have died too. Now, nobody should ever have to live through that, but as you just said, it happens, and it happens all the time, unfortunately.
Well, people say, why me? I say, why not me? I mean, it happened, right? Yeah. It's the club that nobody should belong to. Well, we're here, might as well have a club. That's why I started the Lost Travelers Club, right? Because it's about building community and conversation around this amongst people who get it. And it's about reimagining the grief journey. It's about empowering purpose. That's the first thing I think that I found in this group, who I call peregrines. I'll tell you that story. Because there's never been a word like widow or orphan to describe a parent who's outlived a child.
Right, that's true.
It's been a journey that I've been on for 16 years now, looking and even trying to make one up. But it came in a dream. And a peregrine falcon swooped down, looked at me and said, it's time. And I woke up, it was 3 a.m, and I looked it up. I started Googling the origin of the word peregrine. What did it mean? Well, wouldn't you know, in ancient Latin, it meant lost traveler, a stranger in a field, a pilgrim seeking on a sacred voyage. It ticked all the boxes.
Oh my gosh. I got goosebumps. I'm goosing again.
I encourage everybody to start using the word peregrine, because when people ask a parent who has outlived a child, do you have any kids? We haven't had a word to turn to that could be enough, right? Enough said. Now we have one. Now we have one. And that's special.
And you had that appear in a dream. The falcon came to you in a dream.
I've been diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress, PTSD,
Oh,
I
okay.
sort of look at it as post-traumatic spiritual development versus stress disorder.
I like
But
how you reframe.
got to reimagine all of it, really. Um, but yeah, it's really about identity and finding yourself, this new self that's born out of the ashes of a difficult situation.
So let me ask you, because I have a very dear friend who lost a grandchild, and her life has never been the same. And it's the same whether it's the grandchild or parent,
Yep.
it's still the loss
That's
of
right.
it. So somebody who has lost a child of that, can you give us some steps of what that person can do to start gaining some power, momentum in their own life again?
Absolutely. I want to preface by saying that I think we need a new lexicon for talking about grief and talking about death. I'm avoiding the word loss because
Yes.
I know precisely where he is. He's right here, and he's everywhere. He's bigger than everything, right? Like he said.
Okay.
He's not like a set of keys or a favorite scarf. I know exactly where he is. I didn't lose anything. I know exactly where he is, and he's still there, just in a different form. And so it's really about acceptance. That's the first stage, if there is a stage. I mean, grief, as we all know, is nonlinear. The Kubler-Ross model of the 5 stages of grief is outdated now. And any of us working in the grief world knows this. It was right for its time. It helped a lot of people, but also it hindered that expansion that you're talking about, Glenda, because if you didn't experience those stages of grief or experience them in the order that they were laid out, you think there's something wrong with you.
Sure.
Right? And so as we learn more, we are finding grief is nonlinear. You may experience different dimensions of grief at different times and then go back and revisit different stages because there's a side road you hadn't explored before. Then you get a little bit more of information, right?
Yeah.
So I just published a book about this using quantum mechanics, quantum physics as a metaphor for the grief journey. The book is called The Lost Traveler's Field Guide, because I've heard people saying there's no roadmap. Like, well, what do you do when there's no roadmap? Oh, well, you go to the 7-Eleven, you buy a field guide for where you're taking your road trip, and it'll tell you off the beaten track places to visit that may not be on a regular map, right? And so this book takes you through 13 dimensions of grief. Again, non-linearly. You can go back and forth and experience them different ways. And I don't lay them out as chapters. I lay them out as dimensions, and it starts with dimension 0, the Big Bang.
Okay.
You experience any kind of event that leads to grief. It could be the loss of a relationship. It could be the loss of a pet. It could be the loss of a job. It could be, moving to a different location, leaving your home, buying a new home, all of those things. It could be grieving your youth. I'm 58. I'm going through andropause. Don't get me started. So when you acknowledge that this is what happened. It was like the universe exploded in my face. And I'm in shock. My ears are ringing. I'm numb. I don't know how to feel. I don't know what to feel, right? You're just vibrating with that Big Bang impact. And nothing will ever be the same.
True.
Then you move from that dimension 0 into your mourning. Now, mourning and grieving are very, very different. And this is part of the acceptance of what's going on. Once the shock has worn off a bit and you're able to sort of get your bearings a little bit, you're still kind of numb, you're still kind of, not quite sure, but it starts to come into focus. You start to understand that mourning is a temporary and passive state. You can't do anything with mourning but be in it.
Yeah.
And that's when you need support. You need people bringing you food, cleaning your house, and offering you comfort, on the tougher days. And then when you move out of those morning dimensions into grieving, there's a very thin membrane between the two. And only you know when you've crossed through that membrane, when you've had a breakthrough, literally, into grieving, which is permanent and active. Then you can channel your grief in different ways. You can channel it creatively if you're an artist, which I think everybody is. You can channel it into establishing a foundation that helps remove the stones out of the path of others coming up behind you, which many parents, many peregrines do. And then it takes you through all these other dimensions as you move through, back and forth, up and down, sideways, loop-de-loops. So it's really about being where you are, leaning into the experience, and finding acceptance of what happened. That's the first stage. Whether you're a peregrine, whether you're a grandparent peregrine, a silver peregrine, right? There are ways to find within yourself the acceptance of what happened, so that then you can move toward a breakthrough and really be on that grief walking journey.
So it's kind of like starting to create a new normal for yourself.
Yeah. Well, you have to reintroduce yourself to yourself. You don't know who you are anymore.
No, it's new. You've got different feelings now. You've got different outlooks.
Right. Everything. Like my grandmother used to say, you're an actor if you're acting. Well, you're a parent if you're parenting. Am I a parent anymore is a big question. Right?
Well, you're still parenting, aren't you now? Now you're becoming the grandparent, aren't you?
In a different way. I'll never have blood grandchildren.
Absolutely.
But I have found a way to be a mentor and be a guide and be an educator in ways that I never expected. I never expected to be here living in Spain at 58, doing
Where
this.
Were you originally from?
I was born in Washington, D.C. My father was a cultural diplomat, so that took us all around the world. And so I didn't grow up in America in my foundation years. I've always felt kind of a fish out of water in the States. But I've found that my home, my sense of home is inward. And I love being out in the world and sort of expanding my self in that way.
And it's such a beautiful way, because I can feel your beauty and your kindness.
Oh, you're very nice. Thank you.
We're thousands and thousands of miles away, and yet I can feel the compassion and soul that you have, and I'm very blessed and pleased to have you here to share this.
Thank you.
Because it's such an important factor of what you're sharing is like you're showing the new normal and making your son's life really matter. I have dreams for myself that when I'm gone, I'm hoping that I've touched enough people's hearts
Right.
and lives that that it continues on the flow, and what you're doing is precisely that. And
Well, it's being open. It's being open to everything being possible. Yeah. Right. There was a point where it was toward the end of Cameron's physical life, and there wasn't much he could do but lounge on the sofa and watch documentaries and nature shows and things like that. And he loved science. He loved the universe. Things that explored the mysteries of the universe. And I was in the kitchen doing something, and he was in watching this show about the solar system or something. And I heard the narrator say, "You can fit 14 planet Earths in the North Pole of Saturn." I was like, "What? It's that big?" And I looked around the corner, and on the screen, there was the picture of Saturn we've all seen, right? Mm-hmm. And it's always been this big. Look at the scale next to us. Scale's way off, right? So, and it showed the little graphic of 14 little Earths crowning Saturn. And then they pulled back and they showed Saturn next to Jupiter, and you couldn't even see the Earth anymore. And then they pulled back and it was the sun, and Jupiter was tiny and you couldn't see Saturn. Then they kept pulling back and pulling back and pulling back to I don't know what star, Betelgeuse or something, that takes 1,500 years to do one orbit around. We have no sense of how tiny we are. And what that showed me in that moment, you know, worlds are turned on such moments.
Right.
That everything is possible. That the biggest dream vision that you could have for you, for your community, for your family, for the earth, is still so micro, nano, tiny, nano, micro, tiny, that everything is possible. And that's where I became interested in quantum mechanics, quantum physics. On the subatomic scale, all of the classical physics laws that we know in this size world are off the books. It changes on that subatomic level. And I thought, oh, wow. And this all, you know, I was talking about my CPTSD. One of the symptoms is sleep paralysis. Have you ever heard of sleep paralysis?
Oh yeah. Yeah. You can't move.
You can't. You can't open your eyes. You can't wiggle.
Right.
And yet you are fully lucid in the dream state. You know you're dreaming. You're in the dream world. And you know you want to wake up and break out of it. And you can't.
I know. It's very, I've never experienced it, but I know all about it through spirituality and some of the things attached to sleep paralysis.
Yeah. I mean, it's
so now you're just hitting like it's okay, you're hitting some things up there, like I think I've been there. So tell me about sleep paralysis, because
the first few times was frightening. I was questioning, am I dead? Am I in a coma? Am I having a stroke? I was that lucid that I was asking those questions. And then I broke out of it eventually. And then it happened again. And then it happened again, usually around what I call milestone days, like birthdays, day of passing, other key events throughout the year, holidays. I can almost predict when they're going to happen now.
Wow.
But they happen, and invariably some kind of wisdom comes through. The Lost Traveler's Field Guide came through complete in one of these paralysis epiphanies. And it came through as a video series, which I am working on actually with an intern from an arts institute in Cincinnati. She's animating it. And yet I thought, you know, this needs to be a book. This needs to get out there now.
Yeah.
And so I wrote the book specifically for peregrines, because that was my experience, that was my world. But then I thought, you know what? This is broader than one kind of passing, right? This is one kind of experience. So I rewrote the book with a broader spectrum of audience, you know, considering that anybody who's a grief walker can relate to this. And so there's not a scientist on the planet today who can tell you what's real. Is it your waking state or your dream state? Are they both real? I think they're both real. Mm-hmm. And I've been able to, through practice, conscious practice, take the wisdom that's coming in my dream state in these paralysis epiphanies and bring them across the threshold into my waking life and applying them to my work. And it's been transformational, absolutely transformational.
Wow. I've heard a lot of stories about him, because there's also the side where, you know, an entity can be attached to you, feeding off you too. So for you to get that kind of information and bring it forward into a tangible realm and tangible, you know, you're doing a series about it, that's absolutely amazing. So when you wake up, is it just all there and you just start writing everything you remember?
It's vivid, it's clear. I remember every moment because I'm fully in control. And this is where, you know, that the information, the programming, if you will, the things that we've been told and taught about the mysteries, right? We fear what we don't know. Right. And so when those, you know, it feels like a dark energy attached, or if you're in your dream state and something dark emerges, we forget that it's our dream. We're the ones in control. All I have to do is pull a magic wand out of the sky, zap the monster, turn him into a cupcake, and eat him. I mean, it's that easy.
Exactly.
People work too hard, and
Yeah.
someone has as much power as you're willing to give it. You're the one holding all the cards. Truly.
Absolutely. And you call the shots.
You call all the shots.
Universal law.
It's your dream. Claim it, own it, control it. The way
Or get rid of it.
Get rid of it. Turn it into a cupcake.
But isn't this part of everything in life?
It is.
It is a part of, it's just a part of dealing through life, like we were saying.
Yeah.
You know, while you're walking and you're having all these negative attitudes, well, they probably haven't happened yet. And, you know, here's the, you know, news alert. If it happens, maybe it's just a learning and something telling us we're going the wrong direction.
Listen, I don't believe there is a wrong direction. I think that's another thing we've been taught. What I know to be true is that this moment is all that's real. The moment that you're experiencing, right? There's no time machine to take you into the past and change anything or bring anybody back or fix anything. People ask me all the time, if you could bring Cameron back, would you? No, it was his time and his way, and that's the way it happened. Why would I want to bring him back? So much good has come into my life. That's why I want to erase the word loss from the dictionary for grief, because what I've gained by his creating the space to come in, right? Nature abhors a vacuum. You go out into your garden, you dig a hole, it's come back in 3 days. It'll be full of something.
Yeah.
It'll be full of water. It'll be full of leaves. It'll be full of blossoms, dog poo, air, whatever. But nature will fill the vacuum, right? So we have an opportunity, right? Every challenge comes with an opportunity. Absolutely. And if we acknowledge the moment that we are in and say, I'm as perfect as I can be, that old adage, that old mantra, that old meme, nobody's perfect, is wrong. Everybody's as perfect. You're just as perfect as you can be. In the moment that you're in. And the gift that we have as human beings is our imagination. We get to imagine better in the next moment on our terms, right? So I love, if you're not getting it already, I love a good metaphor. And the way I experience time and space is not as a continuum, but as a pinpoint. This is where we are. And every moment, that point A that we're in is surrounded by what I see as a peacock tail of possibilities, infinite, right? And all we have to do, our only task, our only job is to choose. Choose a direction, go. You'll arrive at a point B, and you'll know when you arrive at that point B. It's important to check in with yourself at point B. Point B is a checkpoint. Do I feel comfortable? Do I feel safe? Do I feel happy? No to any of those. Effortlessly, magically, that point B turns into a brand new point A, surrounded by an infinite peacock tail of possibilities, and all you have to choose a different direction. It's that easy. I think people work too hard at it. But this is so clear to me. This is so simple truth.
It's such, well, that's the whole thing, right? As people are trying to live instead of living. And that's the biggest thing. Instead of moving forward with ease, because just allowing to be at the moment where we are, like now, as we are sitting here having this chat, we're just being present and enjoying this conversation.
Very much.
Instead of, well, the biggest problem is most people are living in the life of thinking of what's happening in the next 5 minutes instead of being present with what's happening.
Yeah, we're projecting too far, and we're living in that darkness that's of our own devising, right? Yeah. It's just symptomatic. A client of mine recently was saying that it felt like the sun had gone. There was no light. Yeah. And I felt like, oh, I know that feeling. And with the challenge comes an opportunity to recognize that when the sun is gone, and this is the law of physics, when the sun is not visible and the sky is dark, we get to become the moon and reflect back into the world the light of the sun.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
The moon doesn't emanate its own light all the time, or necessarily. It reflects the light back from the sun, even when we can't see the sun.
Right.
And so it feels dark. Find your light, because you're part of that, right? When you put a physical object in front of a light, it casts a shadow. That's just the law of physics, right? It's by your physical existence, you create a shadow standing in the face of the light that you are part of. The sun is a symbiotic relationship. It gives us vitamin D, it gives us warmth, it gives us light, all of these things, right? That we give back what? Our gratitude, our love. But the shadow doesn't emanate anything. It's just symptomatic of your existence in the physical. It's just there. It doesn't have any warmth. It doesn't have any cold. It doesn't have any influence on you, right? But it's so different from the light that sometimes we get caught up in that shadow and we get lost in it. That's why I called it the Lost Traveler, the Lost Travelers Club. It's my brand. It's my podcast. It's my book. You know,
I am.
because
Yeah.
we all felt like lost travelers, but it's actually an ironic name because nobody's lost.
Right.
You are where you are, and you've got that infinite peacock tail around you, right? You're not lost. You are precisely where you're meant to be. Otherwise, you'd be elsewhere, having a different conversation with somebody else about something else, right? This is where we're meant to be. I talk about this a lot on my podcast. Your entire biographies and mine, the biographies of our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, all of our ancestors, back to the shared ancestor that we all have. All that pain, all that suffering and strife, all that discomfort, all that love, all that passion, all that creativity and imagination has prepared us for this conversation. It's led us to this moment. That's powerful. To acknowledge, right. to be presence of mind, to acknowledge how special that is when the odds are completely against your even being born anyway, from a physical standpoint, right? The fact that you're here is a miracle. And when we talk about tragedy and triumph, we all have had tragic events in our life, or things that we categorize that way, right? But you have 100% survival. You're here, you're breathing air. You woke up today. That's a triumph.
Well, and I agree with that. And that's what more people have to look at. You know, like I say every morning that I open my eyes, I say thank you, because I'm not guaranteed that any day.
Nobody is.
And when we learn to appreciate the moment, like I'm saying, the moments that we're living in,
yeah,
the time we get to spend with one another, the time that I get to be here and have now gotten to meet you, that everything of that is an incredible triumph and journey. But instead of trying to fix it, we have to learn to live in it with gratitude and move forward with it, so that we encourage our lives, that we shine more instead of being in that darkness.
I think gratitude is also a universal life skill. And Cameron and I had a daily practice, which I still do, before we allow ourselves to open our eyes to face a new day. We count our blessings. We go down the list of everything we can think of that we're grateful for. And sometimes it takes 20 minutes to wake up, open our eyes. Sometimes it takes 2 hours. You know, there's a lot of gratitude here. That's awesome. But to allow yourself to greet every new sun, every new day with that reflection, with that meditation on, wow, I've got a lot to be grateful for. I have no complaints. I have nothing to complain about. I'm breathing air. I have a roof over my head. You know how many people in the world don't?
Yeah.
You know, how lucky are we? And so it keeps one humble, I think. Also, philanthropy is really important. That keeps me humble. Lending a platform to people who may be marginalized or not otherwise be known about. And that's an important part of who I am too.
Wow, that's amazing. And you know, I have a question for you. Through all of this inspiration and these messages and everything that these downloads, through the sleep paralysis. Do you attribute any of that to Cameron in terms of him coming to you with this amazing, brilliant mind that he had?
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't be having this conversation if he hadn't expired, right? If his physical being hadn't expired. So his hand is in every aspect of who I am. I hyphenated my name with his.
I see that, yeah.
That's a great, I'll tell a short story. Not long after he passed, I had to get out of town because I couldn't go to the supermarket without somebody falling apart in my arms. He was beloved in our community, and I was holding everybody else through their grief and mourning and not really able to be with my own. And so I took a road trip to the Grand Canyon. I was in Minneapolis at the time. I took a road trip to the Grand Canyon. Have you been to the Grand Canyon?
Yes.
I have. I'm from Arizona, so yes.
Oh, yes. So you know. So there are these
amazing.
long stretches, 70 miles of nothingness, no civilization, no gas, right? There's a sign, no gas, right? You got to fill up before you go. And it was about 3 a.m. All I could see was the headlights on the road and those amazing stars, because there's no light pollution, right? I mean, and there was a bright star on the horizon, but I couldn't tell if it was a star or a gas station or something, but it was 3 a.m. I wanted a cup of coffee, whatever. And so I approached it, and it was this little enclave of 3 buildings in the beam of a 100-foot tall lamppost. There was a motel, there was a Zuni trading post, and a post office. Nothing for miles and miles around.
I think I know exactly what you're talking about. It's on the reservation, right?
It had its own zip code.
Yeah.
Right? Do you know the name of this little enclave? Cameron, Arizona.
Oh my God.
Look it up if you think I'm lying. Total Twilight Zone moment.
Wow.
So I caught 40 winks in the motel, woke up. The trading post was open, and there was a Zuni elder sitting on her blanket selling the jewelry that she had made. I bought this ring. This is my Cameron ring.
Oh.
Opal and silver. And I asked her, can I sit with you for a moment and have a conversation? And she invited me to sit with her. She was, long silver hair, leather skin. You could tell she was a sage. And I said, my son passed just a few months ago, and I'm having a bit of an existential crisis, an identity crisis. I don't know who I am anymore. There's no word. And I've looked all over the world in every language. There's no word like widow or orphan. How do I identify? Is there anything in your language or culture that holds that? And she said, well, in my culture, your name would change, because your name is the expression of your identity, isn't it? She said, I might call you Henry, whose son is gone. That would become your name. And I would introduce you. This is my friend Henry, whose son is gone. When you're not in the room and people talk about you, oh, I saw Henry, whose son is gone at the market the other day, right? Even when they're just thinking about you, they think about you with your new identity, so that everyone who knows of you and everyone who knows you is holding you in your grief. I thought, wow.
That's powerful.
So powerful.
Yeah.
And yet I didn't want to walk through the world introducing myself as, hi, I'm Henry, whose son is gone. Nice to meet you. Yeah. So what came to me was, how people hyphenate their family names sometimes when they're married, to show the world that they're bonded, but they're still individual, etc. I thought, why not hyphenate his name with mine? Because you often don't hear your child's name spoken after they've passed.
Right.
Not friends, even by family, they avoid. Yeah. They don't want to upset you. And they don't want to bring up the sadness in them. And so I thought, by hyphenating his name with mine, it keeps his name in the world. It's a frequency, it's a vibration that I missed. And I wanted to hear his name spoken. And so I did that. It's also a mathematical equation. It's Henry minus Cameron, which is Henry, whose son is gone, in a way.
Wow.
In the physical sense. And that worked for me. It's not going to work for everybody to hyphenate their kid's name with theirs. That worked for me until the peregrine showed up and said, here's the word. right? It's an elegant word. It's genderless. It's native to every continent on the planet except Antarctica. So it's universally recognized as a symbol. And in most cultures, the peregrine means a seeker. It means courage. It means resilience and strength. All those things that we as peregrines need to tap into to get through, to break through, as you were talking about earlier. And if you go to the Lost Travelers Club, there's a page all about peregrine, and I encourage people to start using it, because now when people say, "Oh, do you have any kids?" I can say, "Oh, well, I'm a peregrine." A what? What does that mean? And then I can talk about what a peregrine means without having to crowbar open my chest and pour my most sacred pain out for somebody to try and understand, and be a drag. It actually opens up a more interesting conversation without getting too personal. And I can choose who I share my personal story with, which wasn't available before to me.
Wow.
So that's that story.
Well, but it's just so interesting because we know there's no coincidences. And it's just like everything was your little puzzle that you're probably still putting together with all these pieces that's coming together beautifully.
Forever.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
And what a way to honor your son.
Oh.
It's the greatest privilege of my life to introduce him to the world through me and through my work. His hand is in every aspect of my work. I'm also a theater artist. I have a folklore theater company, and it's an audio theater company. And his hand is in that too. Before every production, we stand in a circle and thank him for leaving the planet when he was meant to. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing this beautiful work of preserving and protecting stories that are dying with the people that carry them. It's every single layer of who I am, every aspect of who I am. He's there. He's right there. We're still a team. He's not lost.
Yes, I stand corrected.
You get to meet it, and I don't mean to correct, in that sense.
No, but I understand from where you're
offering a new perspective,
and I love that perspective. I will forever change because you gave me a beautiful perspective, and you're absolutely right. And what a beautiful thing now. And as I see the way that you've kept Henry Cameron together as one is the most thing that we can do for anybody who has passed.
Yeah, it's a bridge.
And
that's what quantum physics is. It's about the interconnectedness of everything at the subatomic level, and it needs to be witnessed in order to interact. That's what I love about quantum physics, is that you have to witness it in order for it to exist.
Yes.
Right? And
yes.
So if you are witnessing and validating that feeling that we feel when somebody sees a sign, right? If they see a cardinal, or if they see a butterfly or a dragonfly, or pick up a penny or a dime or whatever, a feather, right? Sometimes it's a sign. Trust it. Those things are real. Those things are tangible.
Yeah.
And trust yourself is the message. Trust yourself.
I found a praying mantis yesterday.
Cool.
And it was on my car, which I hadn't seen to where I was driving. And I looked, I'm like, okay, please just stay on there. I know there's a special message. And I got that little guy on a stick. I gave it back to nature. But when I looked it up, it was a beautiful message, So I truly believe what you're saying. Absolutely.
Yeah. And you have to trust yourself. That's the message of the day, is trust yourself, trust the process, trust this journey. And as hard as it is, and I know there are a lot of people suffering, I don't in any way want to minimize the hard journey that it is. There are always going to be these huge boulders in our path and rough waters ahead, right? Yeah. I describe my mom we describe these feelings of going along, you're feeling fine, and then all of a sudden a tsunami hits you. Right. And you feel like you're drowning, and you could be in the middle of the park, or you could be at work, or you could be anywhere, and it just be overcome. And trusting that you can float is everything. trusting that tsunamis even ebb and flow. And so wait for the ebb, it'll pass, right? It's like whitewater rafting. Have you ever been whitewater rafting?
Yes,
Yeah.
I
They tell you before they put you into the boat is that you might get knocked out of the boat. If you do, don't panic. Don't reach out and grab on for dear life to anything, not the boat, not a rock, because you're going to hurt yourself and you might drown. What you do is you lean back, put your feet up, and let that white water carry you to a calmer place. It'll carry you invariably around those boulders, right? There's some pain that is too thick to get through and too high to get over. But if you trust the process and lean back, trust that you can float, it'll take you around. You can move around the pain and move around those obstacles or perceived obstacles in your path. Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing is our perceptions in life are usually what knock us down the most. If we stop perceiving things and giving it the amount of pressure or the amount we give it so much, and we just allow it to just be. That's the hardest thing is when you're through the storm of just allowing your body to go with it instead of fighting against it. It makes a difference in life.
100%. 100%.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. You are truly a godsend to so many that need this right now. No, it is something, unfortunately, you had to go through what you went through, and it was meant to be for that so that you could be the messenger. And that's what we need is a messenger that will help guide the leader, the person that will help the people that are in that particular spot and drowning.
There are many of us. There are many of us doing this work, and in that sense, I'm not special. But I think that
I think we're all special. I'm sorry.
Well, we are, but I mean, not separate from. I'm not above anybody. There are a lot of people doing this work and writing books and doing workshops and support groups. I'm the vice president of another organization, From Grief to Hope, that is a support system, right? The Lost Travelers Club is not a support system. We're not a support group. We are an empowerment group and a reimagining group, right? So those peregrines who are in a place where it's not working for them, they're feeling stuck in that vortex of mourning, then they want to come to the Lost Travelers Club. If it's a general grief, right? If it's grief over a pet or a parent or partner, whatever, come to From Grief to Hope, because there are tools there to help guide around those boulders, allow you to relax and put your feet up and follow, let the water carry you to a calmer place. There are many of us out here, and I applaud every single one, because it's a calling, and that deep joy in your soul meets a great need in the world. That's your calling. It's the voca, your vocation, the voice that calls to you and from you. That's what you're meant to be doing. And so trust yourself. That's the thing I keep coming back to.
So right, so beautifully and so well said.
Thanks.
So anybody who's watching, and especially those who have struggling at this point, and if you don't know where you can go, you can reach out to Henry, and he will help you to find where you need, or the support that you need. And through that is behind or below all of our this video that's showing now, there's a link to where you can get in touch with Henry and help you to move forward instead of staying in limbo, living on that hamster wheel and not moving forward or finding where you need to be. That's what you're about. So as we finish off, because unfortunately, as I said earlier, our time is now coming to an end. And, do you have some ending thoughts of people that are going through their own trauma and to help them see a little bit of light that you could share?
I believe that counseling, therapy are vitally important to this journey. Nobody should go through it alone. Nobody should feel alone. And when I was first going through my mourning and grief, I sought counseling, and I found some good counselors, but they were not empathetic because they were not peregrines like me. And therapy without empathy is useless. So it takes extra effort, ask for help. But I went and got my diploma and my international certification as a grief and survival counselor, not just grief, but survival,
Right.
because it wasn't there for me. And now I get to be for others what wasn't there for me. So you can find, we're unicorns out here, but if you can find a counselor who's been through what you've been through, that's gold. That's magic. It takes you on a completely different course than a counselor who is working out of the book. And no disrespect to counselors and therapists, because they are my colleagues and I don't want to discount the study and the time that they've put in. But when it comes to something as precious and unique as parental grief, I strongly suggest finding somebody who's also a peregrine like you. And yeah, thank you for this time and this platform. And it's a real gift to share here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We look at this as being our gift as well. So thank you for sharing. And before we ever end anything, we always go to our dear Nicole Harvick, who always gives us her lasting thoughts and impressions. And please go ahead, Nicole.
You know, there is so much depth to this entire hour that it's almost not comprehensible to have so much. I've never gone through an hour with so much wisdom. And you know, when you said you weren't special, I'm going to tell you that you are, and you are a sage as well. But here's in the vision that I'm getting of you, you are an ancient sage. And I see you in a brown robe, like maybe linen, tight, almost looking like a monk. But
Life
it's
goes.
almost as if you and Cameron had that life together and came back at this moment in time to be here for others. It was almost like you had a sacred contract with him, that you chose to do this together. Because there's you know, there's I always say, it's like you're like the horse of a different color. You're only one of them and you're it. And you bring a very different view into focus. And I've always felt the same way. I didn't lose my daughter. You know, as a matter of fact, I got an amazing message that she would have had Down syndrome, that she couldn't do her work in that body. So I knew she wasn't lost. She chose to go back at that point in time because she had something bigger to do at some point. And so for you to come on today with this kind of ancient wisdom for us, you're going to be leading a charge to change what Kubler-Ross did, because like you said, it's outdated. We have to look at it differently. And it's just another extension of our physical life when we transition. We're not lost.
We're not lost, and death isn't real.
Exactly.
So, now what?
Yeah. What's next? Thank you for this. Was absolutely. I knew it would be amazing, but I didn't know it would be this amazing.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love it. Yeah.
And I want to thank everybody for staying tuned and listening to this. It was a very deep hour of so much incredible information that we all need. And, you know, like I said, if you need to get a little bit of help, a little bit of wisdom, or a lot of wisdom, Henry's there. That's what his new, or what he's meant to be and meant to be doing. And he's just following, you know, what has been given to him. And I thank you, Henry. As Nicole already said, you are very special. And we thank you today for joining us on Let's Get Real and for making our time with you so valuable. Thank you so much.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.